Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. I'm Melissa Schoen, and my colleague MaryKate Scott, and I are going to go through the Paycheck Protection Program round 2 today for you. We are going to go over just a little bit about what's different than round 1, how you calculate the loan, how you use the loan fund, which is a little bit different than how you calculate it. And then loan forgiveness process, which again is different than using the loan fund and calculating. So these are all different processes. The loan application, and then our recommended immediate next steps. So we're recommending that if you're interested in doing this, that this happens pretty quickly. So we'll give you some immediate next steps to take. So let me hand it over to my colleague, MaryKate Scott, who's going to start with the overview. MaryKate.
Thanks, Melissa. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I'm MaryKate Scott. So we're talking about an overview of the Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, round 2. And this is under the Consolidated Appropriations Act. This was signed December 27th, 2020. And it was designed to be additional stimulus to aid the economy challenged by COVID. There was $284 billion of funding to reopen the PPP for 3 purposes, either for a new loan. So if you did not apply for round 1, it's extended round 1. You could have an increase in your round 1 loan, or you could get a second draw, and we are calling that the PPP round 2. And this program provides either businesses or organizations, including health centers, with unsecured forgivable loans, and it is intended to cover your payroll and other expenses that enable you to pay workers. And we'll go into all the components of what it is covered in terms of payroll, but it is also designed to cover rent or mortgage interest and utilities. And in round 2, there are a few expansions to covered items. The applications opened earlier in January, and they're now open January 18th to all lenders and all borrowers until March 31st, 2021, or until the funds are exhausted. And we suspect, and we are hearing, that the funds are being distributed very quickly. In discussions with banks, we're hearing that the process was streamlined and much smoother versus round 1, that answers to organizations are coming within a few days, and we see it being highly automated this time, so good news. A big change for round 2 is who is eligible for this second draw, and it is in particular organizations that have 300 or fewer employees and have experienced a revenue reduction of 25% or more in 2020 relative to 2019, and have used all of their first draw PPP. I'm going to spend a little bit of time talking about this revenue reduction, but we recognize many health centers do have more than 300. So that's a key requirement that we wanted you to know on the first page, that it's 300 or fewer employees, and that's an FTE, and an experienced this reduction and used your first draw. We'll go to the second slide now, and we'll talk a little bit about how to calculate your 2020 versus 2019 revenue comparison to ensure your eligibility for this PPP round 2. You can either use annual revenue, that is gross receipts of all of 19 and all of 2020, or you are allowed to select a specific quarter, a 3-month period, so a January to March, April to June, etc., and compare 2020 to 2019, and to show your reduction of 25% of gross receipts. Gross receipts are your revenues before your costs. They do not include any monies you received in the first draw of PPP. However, other aid, such as coronavirus aid relief, the Economic Security Act funds, these are included in your gross receipts. So that's an important calculation to make before you continue on this process. Melissa, to you.
Thanks, MaryKate. So to calculate the loan, what this is, it's similar to last time, but there are some changes. So it's 2.5 times your eligible monthly payroll costs. But that can be during the 1-year period of either 2019 or 2020. So the payroll definition, which we'll go through, is the same as Draw 1, but note that you have the choice of 2019 or 2020 or $2 million maximum. And the interest is 1% for a 2-year loan. No prepayment charges or anything like that. There is a little bit of that in some parts of the SBA site. It does say 5-year loan, but overall, so there will likely be some clarification of that. But we know it's 1% for the 2-year loan. So the loan amount. This is similar as the PPP Draw 1, the first one. So it's your included costs less your excluded costs, which is your eligible payroll costs. So what it's included? Included is the salary, all of the salary, wage, commission, everything. Payment for vacation, all the leaves, medical leave, family leave, payment for health insurance premiums, payment for any retirement benefits, and payment for state and taxes. So what is excluded? Compensation of anyone that is over $100,000 annual salary. So you have to take off anything that goes in excess of $100,000. Any kind of sick leave in the FFCRA, payroll taxes, and then any compensation for employees who primarily live outside of the US. But the big one is really this compensation for anyone over, for the amount over $100,000. So here's an example of what we recommend for when you're calculating the loan amount. So take the 12 months that you're using, either 2019 or 2020, count your total number of employees. So this is full-time employees or part-time employees. So your bodies, right? So a part-time employee counts as 1. So your total number of employees. Separate out those that are making $100,000 annually, over $100,000 annually, or under $100,000 annually. So then you take the payroll costs for all of those under $100,000 and calculate those first. So all the included costs, all the eligible costs you can include in that, and multiply this, calculate it by a monthly payroll by 2.5 months, right? So you calculate the monthly payroll costs, multiply it by 2.5, and that's what we're calling amount A, everybody under 100,000. Then everybody over 100,000, take the number of employees paid over $100,000 annually, and calculate your monthly cost for those. So that's $8,333. So it's 100,000. That's your monthly cost, 100,000 over 12, and multiply 833 by 2.5 months, and that's going to give you your total. And so you add the amount A plus the amount B, and that's going to be your total amount. So we recommend calculating this separately, under 100,000 and over 100,000. It makes it a lot easier. So how can the loan funds be used? So again, different in how you calculate it. You can use it for different things. And note that this has been expanded a little bit from PPP 1. So payroll costs, interest on mortgage obligations, only the interest, the rent, utilities, interest on other debt obligations that were incurred during the covered period, so during 2019 or during 2020. These are some new things: covered operations, covered PPP for workers, property damage, and supplier costs. There's some real good definitions on those, but those are expanded from what was included in the first PPP 1. So you can use these funds for a little bit more things than you used to be able to use them for. So Mary-Kate, let me hand it back to you.
Thank you. So just a few tips and suggestions on your loan application. It is easiest to use the same lender as your PPP round one. And it is not a requirement, but it's simply easier. And if you are using the same lender as your draw one, you are using the same 2019 payroll information, you're not required to resubmit payroll information. So this does make it quicker and easier for you if you were to choose to use the same lender as round one. You do need to apply quickly. We anticipate the funds will be depleted well ahead of the last day, March 31st, 2021. You will need to have your PPP Draw 1, the SBA loan number. You may have two loan numbers. Your bank will probably have a loan number, and then you will have an SBA loan number. This is a 10-digit number. You will need to enter this in and into this application. If your requested loan is $150,000 or less, the documentation on your gross receipts is only due when forgiveness is applied for, not with the application. There is an option to include it in the application if you wish to, but for $150,000 or less, the idea behind this from the SBA is to make it quicker and easier for a small loan to be processed at pace. We've included a link to the form, so you can click on this form. That way you will know exactly what it looks like and what you'll enter. You can ask your bank, and they will likely have an online form for direct submission. As we mentioned, we've been talking to banks, and we hear that there have been a number of things put in place to streamline this whole process, and it can be done quickly and easily online. Slide. So wanted to talk a little bit about this application information. There is no need to establish that your organization is unable to secure other loans. There's no collateral, no personal guarantee, and no need for credit worthiness and ability to repay. The key criteria is whether you were in business on February 15th, 2020. And even if you did do a draw one, you may still need to prove that, which could be as simple as a utility bill, a bank statement, rent, mortgage. The loan payments can be deferred for 6 months. The interest still accrues, but it cannot be deferred for more than a year. We hear that the loan is due in 5 years. As Melissa mentioned, you'll see both 2 years and 5 years on the SBA, and we do anticipate further guidance being issued. But there is, as Melissa said, no early payment fees or penalties. Slide. On the application, the borrower will have to certify that the economic uncertainty makes the loan necessary. Each one of these elements listed on the slide is listed in the form, and you do an initial on the form. We hear that almost every form is now automated, and you can do this with an e-document signing where you put your initials next to these 5 elements. Economic uncertainty makes the loan necessary. Funds are being used to retain workers and pay eligible costs. Applicant has not received other funds under this program, this specific program. Information in the application is true and accurate, and you acknowledge that the lender will calculate the eligible loan using the documentation from the applicant, and that these are identical to those submitted to the IRS, and these will be shared with the SBA. Slide. So Melissa, back to you.
Yeah, thanks, MaryKate. So the loan forgiveness process is the same as PPP1. So the loan can be forgiven if used for eligible purposes. The only difference is that, remember now there's some additional things that you can use the loan for. So the forgiveness amount is equal to using it for all of these things. So payroll costs, rent or mortgage interest during the period that you're applying for, utility payments, and these other covered payments now that are available, PPE, any kind of property damage you might have had, and supplies. Tracking your loan forgiveness is you'll need to be tracking this total compensation for all the employees and the percentage of hours worked. So if they're not full time, right? So you have to do all of this for the 8-week loan period so that you can get the loan forgiveness. Make sure you're calculating the percentage of hours worked if they're not full-time. We recommend, again, separating out those over and under $100,000 and recommend tracking them by person and having that by person. And many of your payroll, if you contract out your payroll, they're able to do this. I know for PPP1, a lot of like ADP was able to do these automatically for you. They had set up systems. So many of you will be able to have some tracking systems provided by your payroll system. And it's a little bit different. The 60% of the loan must be used for payroll, and you can use up to 40% of the loan for the following expenses, right? Mortgage interest, rent and lease, utility, and covered property damage, supplier costs and PPE, those new covered costs. So you can use up to 40% of the loan for those expenses. Obviously, you can't be forgiven for more money than the loan that you got. I know that's obvious, but we want to put that in there as well. You must apply for the loan forgiveness through your lender. So whoever you use, they are the ones you apply through. And you must include the following: documentation, verifying all of the all of the employees, the hours worked, the pay rates, etc., everything that is included in the payroll costs. You have to have documentation on your payments that you're getting the loan forgiveness for. So the mortgage, the lease, utilities, etc., you have to have all that documentation. And then the certification for a representative of the business that you're certifying that the documents are true. So as MaryKate said, much of this is streamlined and online now, and we believe that this will be an easier system, but you do need to keep all those documentations. So coordinating with other loans, you can apply for multiple loans, other kinds of SBA financial assistance, so you can get the PPP and other kinds, but just know that you can't double dip. So you can't use the PPP loan for the same thing that you use other loans for. So that has to be just the PPP can be the only thing covering those costs. There's also the employee retention credit has also been extended to June 30th of 2021. So that is an option, but note that you can't do the employee retention tax credit on anything that's covered by the PPP. So again, you can't double dip on those, but you could use the employee retention credit for anyone that you're not covering with the PPP, or if you don't do the PPP, you could use the employee retention credit. So what do we recommend as immediate next steps? As MaryKate said, we're hearing that this money is going quickly. It's a first come, first serve. So we recommend applying as soon as you can. Contact your bank. It's best to use somebody you've already worked with and find out if they're participating and get their form. Most are just using the federal form, and we have the link there as MaryKate's, we have the form link, but some are using a slightly different form. So talk to your bank first before you do anything. If your bank for some reason isn't participating, we have a link there for where you can find lenders in your area. Get all the necessary information. There's lots of paperwork required, the financial on payroll costs, get all your financials on that, get the payroll information and data, and get, you have this code here for FQHCs that's part of the application process. And then we have the link for the form. So those are our recommended steps. We are available for questions. Here's our contact information. And please note that we are going to set up some office hours. So we'll be available live to have a discussion with you if you have any very specific questions you want us to work with you on. CPCA will get back to you with the date, time, and link for those office hours. So thanks so much. And please do reach out if you have any questions. Thanks.
Thank you so much. We'll look forward to talking to you in office hours, or don't hesitate to pick up the phone. Thanks so much.